Continuing first with our look at the Torah portion, we are in the Torah portion, Terumah. Terumah, which is the offering and offering. Terumah is Exodus 26. Actually, it's Exodus 25, all the way up to 27 and 19. We actually, as of this week, began our midweek Torah class. Everybody, if you're able, tune in, or if you're in the city, come on down for our midweek Torah class. But we talked about the first part of Terumah in our Torah class. But we want to briefly deal with some of the parts, one part in particular of the second half of the Torah portion, Terumah, which is in Exodus 26:31, all the way up till 37. Exodus 26:31 through 37. In the beginning portions, we learned about the Ark, the Covenant being created. Well, not being created, but the instructions for the creation of the Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat, the lid for the Ark of the Covenant, the menorah, the table of showbread, the altar of incense. All these things are in this Torah portion, which, by the way, begins with the offering that was asked of the people for them to bring: all of the gold, all of the silver, all of the copper, all of the precious stones, all of the things that were needed to create all of the things that were in the tabernacle. All the fine linens and the dyes and everything was commanded for the people to offer it up to Terumah, to bring the offering and to lift it up and to give it up unto the Most High. And so here we're going to look at Exodus 26:31 and talk about a little bit more of the things that were instructed to be made. If we could go ahead and read 31 down to 37.
It says, and you shall make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet material, and 5 woven linen, the work of the skilled workmen made with cherubim. And you shall put it on the 4 columns of acacia wood, overlaid with gold, their hooks of gold, upon 4 sockets of silver. And you shall hang the veil from the hooks, and shall bring the ark of the witness there behind the veil. And the veil shall make a separation for you between the set apart and the most set apart place. And you shall put the lid of atonement upon the ark of the witness in the most set apart place. And you shall set the table outside the veil, and the lampstand opposite the table on the side of the dwelling place toward the south, and put the table on the north side. You shall make a covering for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine woven linen made by a weaver. And you shall make for the covering 5 columns of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, their hooks of gold. And you shall cast 5 sockets of bronze for them.
Okay, very good. So here it talks a little bit about the veil of the tabernacle, the dividing covering that was made to, as it says in verse 33, to divide between the holy place and the most holy place. So it talked about earlier the Ark of the Covenant that was made in the very innermost part of the tabernacle. I feel like we have all of this chalkboard. I feel like drawing. Okay, you do it over here. So the tabernacle was this big old spot, rectangular. Inside it was a cube, square. That's pretend like that's a square. Square has people, right? And then there's like a rectangle inside of that. This is not to scale, right? And so here is the bed. Here is the most holy place with the Ark of the Covenant in the inside. So it had in the center was like the place where the altar of incense was, and then on one side was the menorah. On the other side was the table, showbread. Right? So we're talking about this part right here, which was the veil that separated the two things. And so you got, I'll put this up here now. Okay, so what we have over here is, when you look at this in the Hebrew, it's interesting because on verse 33, when it talks about the division of the holy place and the most holy place, place is, if you look in your Strong's, in your King James Version, is italicized. So place is just put in there just for, just so you're able to better understand what's going on. But in the Hebrew, it just says between the holy and the most holy. And really what it says is the Kodesh HaKadashim. Kodesh HaKadashim. So I think some do does translation say Holy of Holies? Because that's probably more like what that is. Holy of Holies. But instead of putting more holy or Kadash, they have Kadashim, the holy and the holies, basically what that would look like. But I want to talk about the actual idea of what's going on in terms of the holy and the Holy of Holies, the idea of Kodesh. If we look at that word Kodesh, which is translated as holy, it looks like this here. The Kuf and the Dalet and the Sheen, which is something that's consecrated, something that's dedicated to specific purposes, something that is hallowed. We think about something being holy but the word really is kind of set apart, right? And so it's interesting when we look at the ancient, these, I put the letters underneath the things that they are. Kut was a sun at the horizon. It's the sun at the horizon. And so you have like this coming together of light at a particular point, right? A concentration of light at a particular point. Like how whenever you look at the sun as it's coming down or it's going up, it seems like all of the light is coming right to this one little spot, right? And so that's what you see with this sun at the horizon, right? And then so the next letter, the Dalet, is a door flap. It's a 10th door flap. It deals with the movements, the in and out movements. And then the Sheen is the two front teeth, where you can think about the idea of sharpness. You can also think about the idea of tightness if you were biting something. So you have that tightness, right? And so all of those things together is the coming together of light to a point through the entrance of the door that is very tight. A straight and narrow path, right? Because if the door is tight, if the gate is straight, you have to position yourself in a particular way in order to get through there, right? Right? You have to turn in order to get through a tight space. And being kind of like a bigger kind of a guy, sometimes I got to be places, but the only way I can get into those particular places is if I turn myself the way that the place dictate me getting in there. I can't just get into the place how I am just usually. I have to turn myself and situate myself in such a way that the opening dictates. And so we're talking about the Holy of Holies. That opening dictates for you only to be able to fit in there one time in a year. And it also dictates that you be a specific person in order to, like, it's super tight. It's so tight, only one person can get there one time a year. And so if you notice the positioning of the altar of incense is, it's like right at the doorway. Right? And so he'll take some of that smoke in the center and take it in there with him. But the idea is that when you think about the most holy place, and this veil that's put there is there to make this division, to cause us to think about the fact that the Most High dwells in the very innermost place. If we think about ourselves as the temple of Elohim, the Ruach HaKodesh dwells in the very innermost part of your being, right? And so in order to get all the way inside of there, you got all of these layers that you have to go through in order to get there, right? Just like in the tabernacle. And so it's interesting that we have this tabernacle that's given to us that shows us a picture of the tabernacle that we are. You think about the tabernacle itself, it's that in the middle of the people. It was surrounded by, it had the external kind of covering of the people, where it was in the middle. The people were all around. They had whatever land that they were on outside of that. And then they had the borders that, whatever their borders was there, right? And so there's like this layer of separation between the outside world and the place where the Most High dwells. And so we, likewise, should have that same type of a boundary between the innermost place and the outside world. We have to go and interact and be in the world, but we still have to be able to protect the set apartness that exists in us, right? The people at times had to, when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, the tabernacle, they were moving. And so when they moved, when they set up shop, they would pack everything up and perform, put layers on the Ark of the Covenant to carry it around. But the idea there is having that degrees, those various degrees of separation. And so I think that when we think about the way that the tabernacle was created and the things that they did in order to maintain these various levels of set apartness, help for us to be able to understand that we have to do the same types of things in terms of creating these layers to protect holiness and set apartness, right? Sometimes there's sometimes the people that we be around, sometimes they might just be just a little bit too worldly and influential in a negative perspective, and we got to put some type of coverings over top of ourselves to protect ourselves from those influences, right? And it's not always going to be like a literal covering, but maybe it's like I'm covering myself with not being with you like that because you is too like negatively influencing my situation, right? And so we have to think about these kinds of things because the Most High, when he talks about the fact that I am holy, I am Odesh, therefore you need to be holy. So he set apart, he set himself so much apart that he's in this place. I'm saying from a picture of the tabernacle, the Most High was set up all the way in the middle, right? And there was so many checks and balances for you to even be able to get to a close proximity of a place that could potentially disturb that holiness. And so it's necessary for us to think about our holiness in that same type of a way, where we have to protect that which is holy in our lives, which is us. Like we're the things that are holy, right? And so, we have to think about those things in our everyday life. So, does anybody have any thoughts, questions, or comments about the veil of the tabernacle? We go. Good. Say that again. Yeah. You talking about into the Holy of Holies? Well, because no one could really go in there. It really wasn't made for like people to go in, except for the one person to go in once a year. You went in there, you died. We saw with the sons of Aaron that they, because they were of a particular lineage, they felt like they was able to go in. I don't know what their mental state was at that particular time, but they went in there and they died. And so it's a place of extreme holiness. When we think about the holiness of the Most High, we think of, because he gave this place as a picture of what it is in the heavens. And so if you think about the Most High, he talks about the Most High being a consuming fire, right? He's light. He is light. And so when you think about, have you ever made something that you had to add like raw eggs to that's hot? And you have to temper the eggs, right? If you're cooking something, you got to add. If you put the eggs in too fast, the transition cooks the egg. So you have to have like a slow introduction of the eggs into the. I used to be a chef. I guess it's the best thing I can think about. Right? You have to put the eggs in slowly into the hot thing to temper it. And so when you think about if something is not light, if something is not life, and it's the opposite of that, and it's just quickly introduced into that thing without being brought to the right level, it can't stand the difference. Like if you go down into the depths of the sea, the pressure is different. So when you come up too fast, your body you get the bends or whatever that's called. When you're down deep, you gotta be like depressurized because the transition is so fast. So think about the Most High, who is utter holiness, and then we gotta come in to his situation, and we haven't got there yet. So there's a long process for the priest to get himself together in order to make himself, to qualify himself to get into the spot. He got to kill the ox. He got to do all the things. He got to get the blood. He got to purify his own self. All that stuff, some steps that he got to take, where he's tempering himself really to get in there. And so it's interesting when you look at the veil. That is this veil puts the pictures, the embroidered cherubs on the veil, just like how the cherubs blocked Eden, because the cherubs in the heavenlies are kind of like the bodyguards, so to speak, in the heavenlies, where they stand around and they make sure everything is good. But the veil is a picture of that. And so it's meant to be a place that's not easily entered into. And again, with that typology, it's showing you that holiness is that. Like it takes a particular way to be in order to walk in holiness that's not the easy, regular way that everyone's doing. It's a different way. And so, I'm saying that is like that to give us a picture of what set apartness is. If it's the easy way, it's probably not the right way. I don't know if that answers you. Okay, does anybody have?
We got so many comments.
Oh, what's it?
How can y'all's greatness and glory come down and fit in the Holy of Holies, being such a tight space? Would it be like fitting in a body? Sure.
Well, when you look at what it was in the time of the tabernacle, they set up the tabernacle, and then the presence of the Most High touched down in that spot where the Ark of the Covenant was. And it said in the daytime it was a pillar of smoke, and in the nighttime it was a pillar of fire. And so you have the presence of the Most High touching down in that spot, not as if to say the Most High came down and his whole being was in that spot. But he put his presence, he touched the spot. It's interesting when you look at Isaiah when it talks about the arm of the Most High being bared. him showing his arm. Or when Israel is rescued from Egypt, how they were rescued with a strong arm. It's his arm that's reaching out and doing it. It's not his whole being. It's a portion of himself, a representation of himself, not the fullness of himself. Like unto, as you say here, when you think about Yeshua, where Yeshua out of his mouth says, I and the Father are one. You can't deal with the Father as you deal with me. Colossians talks about Yeshua being the express visual representation of the Father. And so we're seeing a part of the presence, not the total presence on the Ark of the Covenant.
And also, too, I want to add, people try to literally put the Most High into a box. And the Most High is more really than what we can comprehend.
He's so big.
So yeah, that's one thing you want to understand. Like,
So big.
when you talk about the Most High, he's more than what anybody can say about him. Because what you can say about him, he's that and more. So people got to get out the concept. Now, he sends representations of his glory and what he is and represents, but the totality of what he is, man will never fully understand. Just so everybody knows.
I mean, the scripture says the heavens of heavens cannot contain him.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever we think of as the heavenlies, even though when we have the depictions in the scripture, it talks about his throne, these are all things for us to be able to understand in our physical minds. It's not like the Most High is somewhere sitting on a throne,
Right.
like with feet and a body and all of that. Because the heavens of heavens cannot contain him. He literally can't be put in a box. There's nothing that's big enough for him to fit inside. And so he gives us this imagery because this is the way that we're able to accept it. It's almost like if you're talking to a child and their understanding is limited. And so you can't sit up there and talk to them about things that are very complicated and big, because maybe their vocabulary is not really that big. You have to talk to them in ways that they're able to understand it. And so the same thing, no matter how much intelligence and intellect that you gain, if you still have to learn more things, like until your brain gets to the place where it knows everything, there's still something for you to learn. But if you're talking about someone who's all-knowing, there's nothing that could, if you're all-knowing, then you know everything, literally. You're all-knowing. And so he has to make himself understandable to us who have these finite minds. Like, we can only think about things in terms of being in a box. Like, that's how you understand the thing. If you explain it and categorize it and put it somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, now I see you put it in this box.
Right.
And now I'm able to understand it. Like, we have to categorize things and that's how we understand things. But think about the Most High, who knows everything. Until we get to the place where we're transformed and literally on our physical bodies gone away, and we have spiritual bodies, can we really be able to comprehend the Most High for what he really is? Now we're able to see it we look through a glass darkly. We don't get it, but he gives it to us in, human form that we're able to understand. And I think that's an important thing to remember. When we think about we can only understand the Most High in the way that he has given for us to understand it, which is through the Torah. All right, what else? Okay, very good. So that being said, there's much more to be said about the Torah portion. Talk about all of these chapters that are included in this Torah portion. You can just look at the link in the description and look at what I've said in the past.